Deja gets paid on the 1st. By the 12th, she's already calculating whether she can make it to the end of the month. She earns decent money, not rich, but enough. She knows this because she's done the math in her head 100 times. And yet every single month, the money disappears before she can figure out where it went. She checks her bank balance the way most people check if they left the stove on, with dread, and hoping she's wrong. If that sounds familiar, not because you're irresponsible, not because you spend on anything crazy, but because money somehow leaves faster than logic says it should, you're not bad with money. You're just using a system that was never designed to help you keep it. Here's what Western personal finance culture doesn't want to admit. Most of the advice out there, the budget apps, the 50/30/20 rules, the automatic savings transfers, is built around restriction. The assumption is that if you just control yourself harder, the money will stay. But restriction without awareness doesn't work, because you can't control what you haven't seen clearly. Japan figured this out over a century ago, not through a financial revolution, but through a quiet set of daily money habits so embedded in the culture that most Japanese people don't even think of them as budgeting. They're just how life works. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why those habits work when everything else fails. And one of them, the third one, is so simple it almost sounds too small to matter, right up until you see what it does to your relationship with money over time. If this is the kind of thinking that resonates with you, tap the like button and subscribe before we go any further. It takes 2 seconds and it keeps this channel going. Now let's get into it. Before we get into any of the habits, we need to clear out the biggest lie Western money culture keeps telling you, because it's the reason the apps don't work, the budget doesn't stick, and the month keeps ending the same way. The lie is that budgeting is about math. That if you just track the numbers correctly, allocate the right percentages, and automate the right transfers, the financial stress goes away. Here's the actual problem. Spending is not a math behavior. It's an emotional one. You don't buy things because you calculated that you should. You buy things because of how you feel in the moment. Stressed, bored, excited, rewarded, anxious, or just clicking through a checkout screen on autopilot without ever making a real decision at all. Dr. Shlomo Benartzi, a behavioral economist at UCLA who has spent decades studying why people make irrational financial decisions, found that the primary driver of poor spending isn't ignorance of budgets or lack of willpower. It's the emotional distance between spending and consequence. When money leaves a digital account, the brain processes it almost the same way it processes nothing at all. The pain of payment, as researchers call it, is nearly absent when transactions are invisible. Japanese households save between 20 and 30% of their income on average. American households save closer to 5%. That gap has almost nothing to do with income differences. It has everything to do with a set of cultural money habits that keep spending visible, intentional, and connected to something that actually matters. Here's what those habits look like. The first habit is Kakeibo, a handwritten financial journal that has been used in Japanese households since 1904, when journalist Hani Motoko introduced it as a tool for women to manage household finances with intention rather than guesswork. The mechanism is not complicated, but it's the opposite of every modern budgeting approach. Instead of automating your finances so you don't have to think about them, Kakeibo forces you to think about every single transaction, by writing it down, by hand, in ink, before or after it happens. Not on an app. Not in a spreadsheet. On paper, with a pen. This sounds almost aggressively low-tech in 2026. It works precisely because of that. Research published in the journal Psychological Science found that writing information by hand engages deeper cognitive processing than typing. The brain is forced to slow down, summarize, and engage with the content rather than passively record it. When you write down that you spent $14 on food you didn't plan to buy, your brain cannot look away from that the way it can when a number disappears into an app. The friction is the feature. Kakeibo also asks 4 questions at the start of every month. How much money do I have? How much do I want to save? How much am I spending? How can I improve? Not as a guilt exercise. as a design conversation you have with yourself about the month ahead, before it happens rather than after it's already gone wrong. People who use Kakeibo consistently report saving up to 35% more than they did before, not because they earned more, but because they started seeing clearly for the first time. The second habit is Mottainai, a concept with no clean English translation, but which roughly means a deep sense of regret over waste, and a corresponding reverence for the value of what you already have. Here's the person this habit shows up for most clearly. You have a fridge with food in it, and you order delivery anyway because it's easier. You have a gym membership you haven't used in 2 months, and you keep meaning to cancel it. You replaced something that wasn't broken yet because a newer version existed. You bought more than you needed because it was on sale, and the excess quietly expired on a shelf. None of that is recklessness. It's the absence of Mottainai, the absence of feeling that wasting something is a genuine loss, not just an inconvenience. The financial psychologist Brad Klontz at Creighton University has researched what he calls money scripts, the unconscious beliefs about money that drive financial behavior without people realizing it. One of the most common in Western culture is that money is abundant and replaceable, that there's always more, that wasting a little doesn't matter. Mottainai is the direct counter to that script. It treats every dollar as a representation of the time and energy you traded for it, not just a unit in an account. When you see money that way, waste stops feeling neutral. It starts feeling like a small act of disrespect toward yourself. The practical shift: before any purchase this week, ask one question: do I already have something that does this job? Not as a restriction, as a genuine check. The third habit is the one I mentioned at the beginning, so simple it sounds almost irrelevant until you see what it builds. That habit is Gaman, the practice of patient, dignified endurance, the quiet capacity to wait without complaint, to tolerate discomfort without immediately medicating it with a purchase. Think about how many financial decisions you make not because you need something but because a feeling became unbearable. The impulse buy after a hard day. The retail therapy after a difficult week. The upgrade purchased not because the current version stopped working, but because owning something new created a temporary feeling of control when everything else felt uncertain. The research on this is consistent. Stress spending is one of the most common financial patterns across all income levels. Scott Rick at the University of Michigan found that emotional distress, stress, anxiety, sadness, significantly increases impulsive purchasing as a coping mechanism, independent of how much money the person actually has. Gaman is not about denying yourself pleasure. It's about developing a slightly longer gap between a feeling and a financial response to it. The samurai trained this as a discipline, the ability to sit with discomfort, to let a wave of impulse pass without acting on it, because acting immediately was understood to be the least reliable form of decision-making. The practice here is specific. When an impulse to buy something arises that wasn't planned, wait 48 hours before acting on it. Not forever. Just 48 hours. The research on impulse purchases shows that the majority of unplanned spending loses its emotional charge within 24 to 48 hours. Most of the time, you simply won't buy it, not because you denied yourself, but because the feeling that was driving the purchase has passed and you can see more clearly. The fourth habit is Shokunin, the concept of deep craftsmanship and mastery applied to everything you own and do, including the way you maintain what you already have rather than replacing it. Most Americans interact with their possessions until they break, then replace them without a second thought. The Shokunin mindset treats what you own as something worth maintaining, repairing, and understanding, not out of sentimentality, but out of the recognition that replacement is always more expensive than care. A study on consumer behavior from the Journal of Consumer Research found that people who felt a sense of personal investment in the things they owned, who had repaired, customized, or actively maintained them, valued those items significantly higher and replaced them far less often than people who treated possessions as disposable. The financial implication compounds over years. A person who repairs, maintains, and cares for what they own consistently spends thousands less than someone who replaces on a standard Western timeline. The simplest version of this habit is one thing. The next time something you own stops working perfectly, find out if it can be fixed before you look at what it would cost to replace it. The fifth habit is Hara Hachi, an Okinawan practice of eating until you're 80% full, stopping before the feeling of completeness arrives. It's traditionally associated with longevity research in the blue zones, but its financial application is equally significant. The principle behind it isn't really about food. It's about the cultural comfort with enough, the trained ability to stop at sufficiency rather than continuing until you've reached excess. In Japanese culture, this principle extends quietly into financial behavior. Buying what you need, using what you have, and finding genuine satisfaction in that rather than in the next purchase. This connects to what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill, the well-documented finding that the satisfaction from any new purchase returns to baseline within weeks, driving the next purchase in an endless cycle. Tim Kaiser at Knox College spent years researching the link between materialism and well-being, finding that people who organize their lives around acquiring more consistently report lower life satisfaction than people who invest in experiences, relationships, and purpose. Hara Hachi, applied to spending, is the practice of noticing when you have enough, and actually stopping there. Tonight, open a notebook, not an app, a notebook, and write down one number. How much money came in this month, and one question. Where did it go? Don't judge it. Don't fix it yet. Just look at it clearly, maybe for the first time. That's where Kakeibo starts. That's where the whole shift begins. Deja started keeping a notebook. Not because she suddenly became disciplined, but because she finally saw clearly what she couldn't see before, that most of what she was spending money on wasn't actually making her feel the way she thought it would. The money didn't stop going out. But for the first time, she knew where it was going. And knowing, it turns out, was most of the work. Comment the word enough right now. Just that one word. It's your signal that you're done running from your bank balance and ready to start seeing it clearly. Send this to the person in your life who earns decent money and never seems to have any, the one who can't explain where it goes and has stopped trying to figure it out. They need to hear that it's not their fault, and that the fix is simpler than they think. And if this is the kind of content that actually changes how you think, subscribe. This is what we build here every week.